Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to Tekpon. Today our guest is Cenk, the CEO of Tukel INC Accounting. Hello.
Hi, Christian. Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to have you again with us on the podcast. Today we're going to talk about the pros and cons of starting a business in the US. And I'll let you start to present us the
Thank you.
the
Thank you,
takeaways.
Christian. It's again great to be here. I'll try to make it out this one pretty quick and fast. Very bullet points for the audience sake. Keep in mind we're living in a global world, and our SaaS founders could be anywhere in the world. So what I'm going to talk about are the general specs or the general pros and cons about starting a business, a company in the US. Depending on the country you are, some of those advantages that we're going to talk about might not be applicable to you, or because you might already have them in your own country, right? And some
Right.
of those disadvantages may not be applicable to you because you may not, have them in the US. So what I suggest is not all the points will be applicable to you, and please do listen to these with that mindset in
Yeah.
mind. So let me first talk about one of the first advantage of having a business in the US is its potential market size for a SaaS business. Let me quickly share my screen with you, and I'm going to show you a few numbers now.
Please.
So if you're seeing my screen, this is the SaaS market size. This is the 2023 estimate in $1 billion. So when
Wow.
you look at the US market, it is $141 billion, the SaaS market size in the US. When we look at the whole Europe, this is Europe excluding UK, it's $63 billion. So US is more than double the size. When we look at China, it's 15 billion, and Nordics alone is $7.5 billion. So you see the big multiplier in the US market size. So
Right.
a SaaS business would want to be in there, in that big, large market. We'll talk about disadvantages, but that's one big advantage. Well, let's also talk about the PaaS market, platform as a service. Now, when you look at US, it's $61 billion, whereas in Europe, $28 billion, and Nordics, $3.5 billion. So US is like 20 times bigger versus Nordics and 2.5 times bigger than Europe. So in simple terms, it's the market size. And of course, one might say that, okay, so I'm a business in a place in Nordics, in Romania, in Germany. There's nothing stopping me from being a company in Romania or in Scandinavia somewhere selling to US market. Of course, if you have the access, all the collection systems, go for it. You don't have to set up a company in the US, but you really want to be there in the US. Okay. There are also the second advantage is the pricing. When you go into US, I'm not going to talk into the economics of it now. I'm just going to elaborate it with an example.
Yes.
But usually in a longer period of time, I will talk about the GDP, the funding options, so many other things to give you perspective on the scale.
Alright, let's take a quick break and introduce you to Dealfront. Now, we all know that getting through to decision makers can feel like breaking through a fortress. But picture this, a tool that not only promises but delivers. Imagine if your sales and marketing team could target ideal fit leads and close deals all within a single platform. And that platform is Dealfront. How is Dealfront different? Its revenue engine is fueled by live European data in multiple languages, providing you with insights and access that other tools simply can't match. No more struggling to find the right decision makers. With Dealfront, it's as easy as few clicks. Here's the magic. With Dealfront, you can harness 3 layers of data: market signals, web visitors, and EU company databases. And there's no need to worry about compliance. Dealfront meets Europe's strict standards, ensuring GDPR compliance and competitors can match. Ready to revolutionize your approach to leads and deals? Grab your free demo today at dealfront.com. That's DEALFRONT.com. Don't miss out on the future of successful deal making with Dealfront. Thank you so much, Dealfront, for sponsoring this episode. Now, let's get back to it.
But no, today I'm just going to give you one simple example Again, we're going to, I'm going to be showing you a quick, just a second, please. Kind of why, I don't know why I lost it. And now it's here. And then coming to your screen, we'll talk about the Netflix pricing.
Okay. A good example.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Interesting. So if you look at the pricing of Netflix in the US, the premium plan is $19.99, roughly $20. When you look at the same in Nordics, it's $17.50 at an average. And you look at EU, and EU actually even within EU in different countries, the same Netflix premium plan is priced differently in different countries. Did you know that?
No.
Very interesting, right?
Yeah.
It changes from $10.5 to $19. In India, it's $7.8. Turkey, where I live, $7. And in Pakistan, it's just $4.2. The same Netflix subscription.
Wow.
Right? The pricing side. So because US has the money, has lots of liabilities that comes with it, you can price your product higher in the US market. That's why you would want to be there in the US market.
Right.
The third thing I want to talk about is the innovation ecosystem and the network. Again, please listen to this based on the pros and cons of your own country. I'm just talking about the US market. When it comes to innovation ecosystem and the network, most of the platforms, the bigger ones that we learn from, that we follow, happen to be in the US, like so Y Combinator, right? I mean, Silicon Valley and Austin are becoming the tech startup hubs. We all know that.
Yes.
And most of the startup founders, wherever they are in the world, they go to US for one reason or another.
Yeah.
So I'm repeating, one reason or another. So there is a reason, at least one for you. Right? So you would want to be there. And it's not just that. There are many accelerator programs other than Y Combinator in the US. That's one of the reasons you would want to be in that environment. A fourth advantage would be the funding options available in the US.
Just a second. Do you think it's important for for founders to go to the US to live or to visit, to see the culture? Where do you think the limit is? Do they have to actually live there? Do they have to visit, or they can just stay in Europe, India, Asia, other parts of the world, and launch a business in the US?
Candidly, the founders, the businesses, do not have to be physically in the US or be there.
Yeah.
No. But I strongly recommend, if they want to expand to the US market, get customers over there, definitely visiting there, exploring the ecosystem, attending events, mingling with their target customers, their personas, trying to see, understand what they do, have the feeling. Another very good question, Christian, by the way. Another thing is that if you're a SaaS business, if you're doing B2C, you could do most of the research things online. But if you're a B2B business, the big buyers may want to have a presence in the US. Right?
Yes. Yes.
Big buyers, big US companies prefer to buy from US companies. So even if you're not per se physically as a founder or the sales director or the sales rep, you may not be in the US, it's okay. But you may have to sell via your US company to the B2B customer.
Of course.
Right? Yeah. On a personal note, knowing the numbers, the cost of living, and as such, I do not recommend founders to go and live in the US.
Yeah.
Right? Today's online world, you could do many things from wherever you are. But yes, you would need to be there once or twice every year
Yes.
to check the events, network, feel your target audience, and on that stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Does it make sense?
Yeah. I like it. I like your advice. Let's move on to tip number 4. You said about funding.
Yes, let's talk about funding. And then when I say funding, there are many types of funding. We talked about it actually in our previous podcast, right?
Yes.
And I shared a few links with the team. Let me share my screen again quickly here.
Yes.
And then coming. So if it's visible.
Yes.
So from the funding options, you got the bootstrapping, friends and family. This usually happens wherever you are in your local country. But then you have the incubation programs and the accelerator programs, depending on the stage of your company. Probably you have a higher chance in your local country being accepted into one of those programs. But at the same time, if you want bigger money and you want to have access to a bigger network, you would want to get accepted to a program, one of the programs in the US. And then the other funding options are, we're talking about investors, angel investors, VCs, and corporate investors. And then in my next advantage, I'll elaborate the size of these investors. Okay.
Right.
The ones in the US have they have far more money than the ones in the Europe. There are also these crowdfunding platforms, either reward-based or equity-based, and there are also options for loans. Like we talked about FounderPad, we talk about CapChase, we
Yes.
talk about Stripe or PayPal, revenue-based funds.
Yes.
Most of these funds would be available for US legal entities, right? So in some of the countries, you have limited access to these funds. Like I know a few things, like the likes of FounderPad, CapChase, Stripe Capital, PayPal Capital. These are not available in nearly half of the countries in Europe.
Makes sense.
Right? So they provide these to US entities. So we have many Nordic or European founders who set up their companies in the US, and they have access to these funds. But their entities in Europe, they don't have access to these funds.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
So
think it's a good graph. I love it. Really valuable.
And let me share another data point.
Please.
This is something also I like. The amount of available capital actually within the US. This is really a very interesting number, and I'm coming on your screen now. So when you look at the VC investments, okay, VCs, they've invested $241 billion in the US, whereas in the EU, it's $90 billion. So it's nearly 3 times more than Europe, the investments. Right. And if you remember from our podcast, a previous podcast, 5 tips on getting VC funding.
Yes.
One of the things we talked about is to target the right VC. And
yes.
Many VCs only invest in the US, in the US entities. They don't invest in European entities. Right? So you have more options. Whereas most of the European VCs, they tend to invest more often in the US entities. They're more flexible.
Didn't knew that.
So, I mean, there would be more funding options. Again, please listen to this with a pinch of salt, depending on your country, your own network, the right. available resources to you. You might be better off staying wherever you are. This may not apply to everyone.
Right.
One of the other benefits of being the US, again, depending on where you are, is the availability of collection and payment systems. So
Okay,
we're
how
talking
does that
about
work?
tools like, Stripe, PayPal, Apple Pay, Google Pay. Depending on your target audience, your collection system, buying behavior, or your ideal persona, some of these tools will be very important. If you're making a B2B sales to a US company, a US enterprise, they will be more, how should I say, open to paying to your US bank account. You could even
Right.
set up direct debits. Whereas
Yes.
if you want them to send money to a European or some other place in the world bank account, would they do that? Yes, they would do that. It will just take longer time. It will take a longer time to make an agreement, to set up their payment system for that US entity. Um, just making your life a bit more difficult.
Yes.
Let me put it this way.
And do we also have disadvantages?
There are many disadvantages, by the way. Um, Let me finish off with a couple of notes on the advantages side.
Okay.
Um, the US, the things that we do not know makes us get scared, right? We're afraid of the things we do not know. So when people say setting up a company in the US is difficult. I don't know taxes, compliance, regulations. Look, guys, I mean, wherever you are in the country that you set up your business, you're living in, clearly you know more, right? It's very clear,
Yes.
language, many things. On the other side, US is not that complicated. We're afraid because we don't know, and it's not that costly to set up a company, to hire someone to manage your books and taxes and guide you on compliance. That's actually what we do as a business, as Tukel Accounting. We act as their outsourced finance teams. But regardless of that, my personal observation, people are afraid of the things they don't know. And it's not that complicated. People set up companies in Delaware. You hear about this all the time. I get this
Yes.
question all the time. When I want to set up a business in the US, should I set it up in Delaware state? Which state? I heard that Wyoming and Florida and Texas has no income tax. Why I'm not? I want to set up in those states. Okay. There will be advantages of setting up in those states. But the reason that people set up in Delaware is VCs prefer to invest in companies in Delaware because it's business friendly legislation.
Right.
Investing in a company in another country, in another jurisdiction, has its own risks for the investor, right? That's another big advantage of setting up a business in the US. Now, you asked about disadvantages. Well, what can you think of one for yourself? What will be a disadvantage of setting up a business in the US? What do you think?
Mm, that you have to learn all the things from zero, which you mentioned already, and you may be a bit scared that you don't know the legislation, people, lawyers, accountants, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
if you have the right partner, I think you can manage this successfully.
Well said. Well said. Exactly. Not knowing how to operate in the US is one of the big disadvantages. And to your point, if you have the right partners, life becomes easy. It's very smooth sailing. You don't have to worry about. You just focus on growing your business. Let others handle your financials and taxes. It's easy.
Yes.
Another disadvantage is actually related to this is the higher admin costs. In the US, it's usually the fees are usually a bit higher than what they are in Europe or other parts of the world. I'm not talking about Switzerland, of course, but probably one of the more expensive, or the UK.
Yeah.
But US admin costs are a bit higher. Lawyer costs and accountant costs and all that stuff. And by the way, because people do not know, they do not have a network. They go to the big brands, the big names. I'm not going to give the names of those big brands in the legal arena, the attorneys, the law firms, but they cost you an arm and a leg until you become like a 20, $50 million company. Don't go to them, please. You don't have to. They are
Right.
very expensive. I mean,
Yes.
I had a client who in 2 years has paid $500,000 to one of those branded law firms in the US.
Wow.
It's a lot of money. So yeah, there are startup lawyers, there are startup firms like ours that will help startups at reasonable fees.
Yes.
The other disadvantage is actually, how should I say, the stricter laws and compliance. Let me elaborate. It's funny. I'm Turkish, and each country has its own tax laws, right? So, like when you go to a dinner with friends, uh, and the bill comes in, and you share the bill, and everybody asks, "Hey, do you need the receipt? Do you need the invoice?"
Yes.
Everybody wants to take the invoice, the bill, to book it as an expense to their company,
Mhm.
right? That happens. If you do this in the US, if you go for a dinner with the friends and take that receipt and charge it to your company as an expense, it's tax fraud. And the penalty is prison.
Wow.
Yes, that's simple. Because you're intentionally and knowingly booking an expense which is not a company expense. You're intentionally robbing tax dollars.
Wow.
And penalty is prison. Right? So, I don't want to scare anybody. But anybody wanting to go to US has to know about this. US tax laws and compliance requirements are strict. They are very strict. And I mean, if you go to these towns, you're like afraid of your life in certain parts of the world. Even in many cities, you don't go to certain neighborhoods at after a certain point in time at night, midnight. You don't go there.
Yes.
You're scared of your life. Being robbed. And in the US, I mean, go to those towns, but don't deal with IRS. Don't be against IRS. That's the number one thing you
Yeah.
should be afraid of.
Right. Right. But I guess
Right?
with the right partners and yeah, it's easier to have a trusted partner in multiple areas of the law rather than learning it all by yourself.
Exactly. Work with the right people. You don't know what you don't know. And
What people do founders need? They need an accountant, they need a lawyer, and what else?
those are the two things they would actually need to keep them safe.
Okay.
Let me elaborate. What we do is, uh, Christian, we work with SaaS and PaaS companies. That's our specialty.
Yes.
And we work with non-US founders. 80% of our clients are non-US founders, actually non-US SaaS PaaS founders. That's what we do. And what we know is when they expand into US, they don't all have the funds, they don't have the finance team. We become their outsourced finance department. From their bookkeeping, accounting, agreements, compliance, taxes, they want to hire people, payroll, even at the hiring stage, what type of offer letter, benefits that they should give, health insurance, how do they terminate, what are the rights different states, the sales tax, the whole 9 yards. And then you come into the legal matters. I'm going to issue stocks. I want to create a stock option plan. I want to have a privacy policy. I'm going to make an agreement with this enterprise, Colgate or GE or Coca-Cola or some other brand, right? I want to import some products from China or from my local country. I want to have a service agreement with the company in my local country and the company in the US because I don't have anybody in the US. All the work is happening from my company, from wherever I live. So I need a service agreement.
Yeah.
These are like legal things. So what we do is we partner with a legal firm, or we work with the client's legal firm, lawyer, to make sure we identify what needs to be done and review those. Imagine having your, virtual fractional CFO with his team, competent team, serving for you at a fraction of a cost. And who knows SaaS business? And who knows non-US founders and their challenges?
You have more time to focus on the more important things and no more
Exactly.
worries about it.
Yeah. Actually, most of the problems, disadvantages can be addressed. But there are a few of those which are a bit more difficult to address, the disadvantages. One of them is lack of network, especially if you're doing B2B business. So in a B2B business, what are you doing? You're going to these companies, enterprises, right? And if you're in a certain country, you might have a certain network, you might know people, and reach to them with warm introductions. It makes your life easy. Then you're going into US, in a country, in a big world, highly competitive world, and you don't have the existing network. So it's a challenge for many non-US founders entering the US market, especially in B2B business. And that's where guys like you come in, your book, Kings of Networking, right? How do I reach people? So it's a B2B sales process. We talked about it before.
Yes.
But if you want to become a global company, you have to do these things anyway. You cannot stay in your own country.
Right.
You'll have to expand that comfort zone. And the challenge is, US is a very competitive market because you've seen the numbers. Everybody wants to be in there. Everybody wants to be in there. There are also some companies, some businesses who are very local. Imagine a SaaS product who has a logistics software that has to be implemented in the logistic firms, right? So you might be better off in Europe because you have easier access to those customers. You have to maybe visit them,
Yes.
put in the hardware, get it configured in the truck, and train that logistics guy. And not all the logistics guy have the same, how should I say, education level to go on a Zoom and learn things online. You might have to be there hands-on and show them a few things because they have other strengths. Everybody is not a technology guy learning things. So depending on the type of business you do, you might have to be physically in those locations. So for those guys, US might be, how should I say, a market to enter when you have millions of people, because you will need to have feet on the ground. You will have to have presence on the ground to get your business kicked off. That's in a quick shot. What do you think?
No, you said it really well. Yeah, I like how you explain it. Everybody understands it.
Yeah, I quickly, summarized it, but in a nutshell, every founder has to assess its own business. There are great advantages. We're afraid of things we do not know, but there are solutions to those. It's competitive, yes, the US, but then the market size, the pricing opportunities, the funding opportunities, collection opportunities makes it quite
Worth it.
appealing.
Yeah.
And if you want to say, I'm going to be a global business, you'll have to be in the US. If not today, but tomorrow.
And from my experience and my interviews with founders, it's better to start directly there rather than just starting locally and then expanding one by one and then to the US. If you conquer the US market, it's easier to expand to Europe, Asia, other parts of the world. But if you conquer Europe, it's not that easy to get into the US because nobody knows you.
Very well said. And that's one of the things we talked about with a client. That he was launching his second business actually, and he wanted to test the concept in his local market. And I said, look, your local market is local.
Yeah.
And if you want to be global, you have to test it in a global market like US. If it works there, it will work everywhere. What do they say? If you can make it in New York, you will make it anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, well said.
Is there anything else that you want to add to the podcast?
Christian, thank you very much. I hope SaaS founders find these tips helpful. And if they want to recap and want to talk more, they can always reach out to me.
Thank you so much. I love these two podcasts, really strategic and specific. And personally, I would watch them once again and not get bored because it's it's such a valuable advice and well explained. Thank you so much, Cenk.
Thank you, Christian. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.